We apologies from absence. I know we have apologies from Member Hilton. Ms. Bailey, are there any other apologies that we should note?
Yes, Chairman. Minister Favour Williams will be absent.
Okay, thank you very much. If the minutes of the meeting held on the 16th of June were circulated and are here for confirmation, subject to any changes, any editorial changes. Can we have, if there are any changes on, pages 1 or 2, please let us know. Or, let me just put the entire thing. Any changes to the minutes that anyone has? If there are no changes, kind of a motion to accept the minutes. Moved by.
I'm willing to move. Was I present at the last meeting? I think I may have been away.
So move. Yeah, no, you were here, member Senator Hill.
Yeah, sure.
Okay, moved by Senator Hill, seconded by.
I second it.
Member Robinson. All right, thank you. And all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Ms. Bailey, were there any matters arising from the minutes that need to be dealt with in this meeting?
No, Chairman, just the fact that you said that there were some clauses that had to be revisited, right?
Yes. And we're making a list of those. Okay, so that means that we would resume or review, beginning, I believe, on clause 123. Yes.
That is so.
Okay. Over. Who is doing the honors today?
So Corbett, JCA. I will continue.
Oh, you'll continue. All right. Thank you.
Disposal of goods otherwise than by sale. 123.1. If any goods on being offered for sale on at least 2 separate occasions are not able to be sold for a sum that is sufficient to pay all claims as provided for in section 122(1)(a), B, C, and D, the commissioner may A, sell the goods for an amount that is less than that sum, or B, instead of selling the goods, dispose of the goods.
Bobby, I came to see that your mouth.
Senator Hill, you might want to mute your phone.
I just did, Minister. I'm sure you did not hear anything. Thank you so much.
Okay.
B, instead of selling the goods, dispose of the goods in such manner as the minister may direct. 2, goods disposed of under subsection 1 may be removed from the government warehouse or other premises where the goods are kept in accordance with the directions of the commissioner. 3, disposal of goods under subsection 1 does not affect the liability of a person responsible under this act or any other applicable law for paying expenses or charges incurred in respect of the goods, including any expenses and charges related to the disposal of the goods. Non-compliance with sales conditions. 124. If the purchaser of goods sold under this subpart fails to comply with any conditions subject to which the goods are sold within the time applicable to that condition or as may be prescribed by rules, A, the sale becomes null and void. B, the expenses incurred in respect of the sale and the storage and handling of the goods as from the date of the sale shall be deducted from such amounts as may already have been paid by the purchaser towards the sale price and shall be non-refundable. C, any surplus arising after the deduction of expenses under paragraph B shall be refundable to the purchaser. And D, the goods may be resold under section 123 or disposed of in accordance with section 125 if that section becomes applicable. Clause 125, removal of goods following sale. 1, goods sold under this subpart shall be released for removal by the purchaser from the government warehouse or premises where the goods are kept if A, the purchase price is paid, and B, the conditions of sale have been complied with. 2, if goods released under subsection 1 are not removed within the period specified in section 114, A, the purchaser becomes liable for any amounts incurred under section 111 on the expiration of that period, and the commissioner may refuse to allow the removal of the goods unless those amounts are paid. Or B, section 118 applies to the goods if the commissioner so directs. 126, duty consequences of sale or disposal under this subpart. Duty and tax imposed on imported goods sold under this subpart shall be assessed at the rate applicable to goods cleared for home use at the date of the sale. Subpart G, temporary admission procedure. Clause 127, temporary admission of goods. The commissioner shall grant permission for the temporary admission into Jamaica of imported goods that are intended to be exported from Jamaica if the commissioner is satisfied that A, at the time of exportation from Jamaica, the goods will be identifiable as the same goods that were imported into Jamaica. B, the goods are not intended to undergo any change other than due to normal depreciation from the use to be made of them. And C, the requirements relating to the importation of the goods under the customs laws are met. 128, security. Where permission is granted for the temporary admission of goods, the declarant shall, prior to the release of the goods, provide security in accordance with Part 12 in respect of the duty and tax payable on the goods and the fulfillment of the obligations of the declarant for temporary admission of the goods. Clause 129, goods entitled to relief from duty under temporary admission. The minister may prescribe regulations designating the categories of goods that are entitled to total conditional relief or partial conditional relief from duty under temporary admission. Clause 130, time period for temporary admission. 131, subject to subsections 2 and 3, temporary admission of imported goods may be permitted by the commissioner in such circumstances as shall be specified by rules for a specified period not exceeding 6 months from the date of registration of the declaration in respect of the goods. 2, before the expiration of the period specified pursuant to subsection 1, the commissioner may, on the application of the declarant, extend the specified period for such further time as the commissioner considers appropriate, but in any event not exceeding 3 years from the date of registration of the goods declaration. 3, where goods are seized by a servant or agent of the government, A, the operation of the period specified under subsection 1 or 2, as the case may be, and B, the obligation to re-export the goods is suspended for the duration of the seizure. Production and examination of goods. 131. 1. Goods admitted into Jamaica under section 130 shall, upon a demand made by the commissioner, be produced or otherwise accounted for, and a declarant who fails to produce or otherwise account for the goods in accordance with the demand commits an offense. 2. The commissioner may, for the purpose of ensuring the identification of goods temporarily admitted into Jamaica, affix customs marks. 132, proof of re-export of goods under temporary admission. The burden of proving that goods temporarily admitted into Jamaica were re-exported from Jamaica in accordance with the applicable export procedure and within the period specified under Section 130 in relation to the goods shall rest on the declarant.
All right, there was a comment on that clause, I believe. By the way, this is a very important part of the new bill to make, logistics businesses more seamless in Jamaica, to allow for a seamless process for transshipment in this particular case, but in other cases that will come to logistics where in some cases the nature of the goods change. There was a comment from the Customs Brokers Association on 132. You want to just expand on that comment and your response? I guess that would be Hazel Edwards.
Yes, Minister, I seem to have lost my video. I'm Chairman, I'm not sure what the difficulty is, but I hope you're able to hear me. Right, so the brokers had raised some concerns at 132, indicating that the provision is stipulating that the declarant has responsibility for ensuring complying with all the obligations with the temporary admission regime, and in particular for ensuring that the goods were duly exported. And they had some concerns about the definition of declarant. And you recall that this issue had been raised before, and they felt that there was a risk that the responsibility could fall on the customs broker. Our view, of course, is that the definition of a declarant does not need to be adjusted, because the broker would be acting on behalf of the declarant when the broker is acting in his capacity as broker. However, we did contemplate, when we looked at it, the possibility of making an adjustment to indicate not only on the declarant, but also that the responsibility would rest on any other person who has responsibility for complying with the requirements for the temporary admission procedure. So some language to that effect, and that will be intended to capture persons who may be acting as guarantors, for example, who may have expressly committed to customs that they will ensure that certain aspects of the procedure are followed, and making an extending the provision to capture those individuals. So with the declarant and any other person responsible for ensuring compliance with the requirements of the temporary admission procedure. So some language to that effect. You'll recall that on the question of the liability of the brokers, we had recommended that that issue be addressed at clause 270, which deals with liability generally.
Yeah, okay.
Clause 1.
So I'm sorry, Minister, before you proceed, might I just ask the admin to let Senator Crawford into the meeting, please?
Are you seeing Senator Crawford?
Chairman is in the meeting.
He's now in? Okay.
Yes,
Welcome, Senator Crawford. All right, please continue. 134, I believe.
We're at 133.
No, 133, yes.
Contravention of import conditions or failure to re-export within time. 1, where any condition on which imported goods are temporarily admitted is contravened, or the goods are not re-exported within the period specified under Section 130, A, the goods shall be treated as if they had been declared for home use, and the duty and tax in respect of the goods shall immediately become payable. And B, if security was given in respect of the goods, the security shall be enforced, but the Commissioner may, having regard to any explanation given for the contravention, determine whether none, all, or only a portion of the duty and tax shall be paid. 2, where goods temporarily admitted into Jamaica are exported within the time period specified under Section 130, the security given, if any, in relation to the goods shall be refunded or released as the case may require. Clause 134, temporary admission pursuant to international agreement. Notwithstanding any provision to the contrary, the Commissioner may permit goods to be temporarily admitted in accordance with any applicable international agreement in force as regards Jamaica.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes,
perhaps before, if I could make an observation before we move on out of temporary admission.
Mhm.
It has to do with, I remember one of the members had raised it before, and we had indicated that we would deal with it when we got to the part dealing with temporary admission.
Mhm.
And I believe it may have been member Webby who had raised some concerns about the time that goods remain in Jamaica when they are under temporary admission, or what we now call temporary import.
Mhm.
And I just wanted to highlight to the committee that we would have looked at it at clause 130 and noticed that at clause 130, the time period now is 6 months.
To 3 years. 6 months.
Right, and the max at first, and the
maximum 3 years.
maximum is the 3-year period. Yes, Chairman. So I had indicated at that time that you would not have a scenario, ought not have had have a scenario where goods remain indefinitely in Jamaica. The 6 months is an extension from what now it is 3 months. And we start to move that to 6 months as a more reasonable time period. But the 3 years was contemplated to allow for longer term projects that may require goods to be here for longer than 6 months, such as, for example, high value equipment and so on that persons may temporarily import. But after the 3-year period, those goods would need to be cleared for home use or put under another procedure, for example, exported or so.
Right.
So I'm not sure if that addresses the concern that had been raised. And also just to highlight at 134, which is also an issue for logistics, many countries utilize the carnet system, whereby it's very simply an international regime, whereby the chambers of commerce, I would say, cooperate together to provide security, and it allows goods to move seamlessly from country to country under the temporary admission system. It's very useful in certain industries, like, for example, racing. And clause 134 is intended to be the provision that will enable us to accept the security arrangements or so, or temporarily admit goods pursuant to those types of international arrangements that may exist. Jamaica is not yet part of that arrangement, but if the decision is taken to move in that direction, clause 134 will enable us to participate effectively in those international clearance arrangements.
Right. Well, thank you for that. For
Chairman,
highlighting that. Yes.
Quick question. Through you to Hazel. Hazel, just remind me of the provision which deals with what happens when goods are temporarily admitted, but remain in the island in contravention of the temporary admission. So I see what happens when the security is given and then they are re-exported. The goods shall be refunded. Where is the other provision that deals with what happens when they are used? Because you know that has been a recurring issue. I see, right. So they would be treated as if they had been declared for home use. And just remind me, what is the follow-up mechanism that custom uses to track these goods over the time frame?
So our systems, and I believe the electronic processing system would have, as it were, triggers, so that when the goods are first admitted, the condition and the time frame related to the goods will be noted. And once that time frame has expired, I believe that the system would provide a notification, and I could just defer to any of the operations persons who could just speak specifically to the system, but there'll be a notification and customs would then be aware that the time for these goods has now expired. And so if we don't have a corresponding export declaration to show that the goods have gone out, then the demand is made for the duties. And of course, if the duties are not paid, the goods become uncustomed goods, or they're goods that would have been diverted, and customs would be able to seize those goods as being, you know, goods that have not been properly cleared and released.
How valid is the concern that has been repeatedly made about equipment coming in, for example, for road construction or business building construction under temporary admission, and then remain and compete with local persons in an unfair way? I'm sure you would have heard it. And just to point out to persons how that now is being dealt with in a better way or in a reinforced way.
Thank you for that question, AG. I'm going to see if I can just track down the provision very quickly, because it is something that we are aware of. I mean, we certainly came across it when we were doing our consultations. We know that sometimes it happens when there are projects that are of national importance, and those projects may take longer than initially planned. And so those goods are temporarily imported. It was intended that they would be here for a year. There's a project overrun, and the goods may be here for, you know, a longer time. And that is why we contemplated that 3-year period as being a reasonable time period to wrap up those matters.
So what is the current provision now where the time frame allotted has expired, but the work is still going on? What is the mechanism for dealing with that?
Well, for that,
so the items imported would still be under use, but the allotted time statutorily, whether it's the 6 or the 3 months, have passed.
Well, it was a challenging issue, AG. For us, for the Customs Act, and when we did our research, we realized that we have to put a timeline for temporary.
No, she's asking what obtains now. I think she wants to illustrate what the improvement is.
Well, what?
If I may,
yes.
Go ahead, Commissioner.
Just before you come in, Commissioner, let me just clarify. Thank you, Chairman. 2 things I'm asking: what obtains now, and how would it be treated if, for example, genuine delay happens and the 3-year timeline is exceeded in respect of equipment, for example, brought in to deal with a project? How is that going to be treated in the law?
So before we speak to the law, I just want to speak as to what happens now operationally. And of
you turn your video on when you're speaking, because it's being broadcast on YouTube, and when you have kind of a black screen and you're speaking, it doesn't look so good.
Apologies, Minister. I trust you are seeing me properly. No?
Yes.
All right, somewhat fine. So just to speak to what happens operationally, and of course, as it relates to the law now, is that when these item comes in and they would have received the necessary approval for temporary importation, a deposit is normally required in lieu of the duty. And if it is that they would have stayed over their time, then we would draw down on that deposit. If it is that if there was an arrangement where a deposit was not in place, we would have made demands for the duty to be paid, or that the item be immediately exported. Or also, we would use our enforcement capability and take away or seize the item until the duty requirements is satisfied from a customs perspective. So I hope that somewhat addresses the question that Member Malone Fort put forward.
Mrs. Ricketts, Julian Robinson here. Can I ask you, on how many occasions have you actually done what you just said?
Right, so in relation to specifically, member
Like
Robinson?
construction, because that is where the big complaint is, particularly around construction, where, you know, I obviously won't call names, where stuff is brought in mainly for a national project, but it remains indefinitely here, unfairly competing with private contractors. So what you just outlined, has that been done by customs ever?
Yes. Of course, I would know that that has been done, but if it comes in for a national project and we would have gotten where the deposit has not been in place and we would have gotten such instructions to allow for the temporary import as per a national project, then we would have, if it is that we're having difficulties in getting the duties, we would have relayed that information back to our parent ministry, Ministry of Finance and Public Service, to indicate to them that this is a challenge that we are experiencing with regards to this project, and that we require for their intervention, but also that we continue our own enforcement work to stop the item from being used. And I recall a particular project. It was really on the film industry side, which we would have stopped the item being used because it was not, or to put it another way, we did not receive the duties for the item, or we did not receive a request for further extension of the temporary import, and of course would have made the necessary request for the item to be re-exported.
And in general, in these cases, you would,
I'm sorry,
you would respond to an issue or a complaint that would be received, but it's not something that customs would be proactive. You wouldn't have the resources to proactively be checking these sites to ensure compliance.
So once a temporary import comes into the system, as Ms. Edwards indicated earlier, it is time bound. It is time bound, and so the system registers that this item is in temporarily for X time. Immediately, once it's close to expiration, we would then trigger an email or letter to the importer, and of course, the customs broker advising that this item is due, for re-exportation. Normally, we receive a request for re-exportation. I had a case just last week or the week before of someone who would have written to us to indicate that, of course, that they apologize for not putting in their request early. We would have responded positively on the one that they were compliant with, and of course, not so favorably in their case, that the item must be re-exported within X time. And of course, failure would mean that the deposit will be utilized within the customs system. So those are the approaches that we utilize. I do understand, Member Robinson, as you relate the challenge as it relates to the competitiveness. And I think on one end, we can also look at the economic life and value of the item coming in, because competition is real, and so that is something that we probably should look further into. But nonetheless, from an enforcement standpoint, the Jamaica Customs Agency does do the necessary enforcement action as it relates to the items in question. Thank you. Hazel, as it relates to the provisions that in the current bill that Member Malawi Fort asked about, if you could please update.
CG, CEO, so the provisions in relation to, that you mentioned, collecting the duties and drawing down on the security, that would be at clause 133. And in terms of additional measures to track, we would also, clause 131(2) would also be relevant in terms of the fact that we also will and can affix marks and so on, so as to be able to keep track of the items in addition to the notations that will be made in the customs system that would indicate that this article is imported for a specified period.
I mean, one of the keys is to make sure that this is done efficiently. There are a lot of industries that this impacts, and one of them certainly is the entertainment industry, where sometimes for a show or for a film being produced, you have to bring in equipment temporarily. And I've had some experience with that in having to bring in instruments that are only going to be here for a concert, and then they go back out. And what we, Jamaica, entertainment being such a big part of our culture and our economy, I would want to sort of know that we are stepping up the game a little bit in terms of the efficiency of this regime.
Chairman, if I may, there's a similar consideration, although it may have been addressed, with duty-free items. A similar situation as you just recounted about the instruments. Sometimes they bring in material just for samples, and they have to be returned and so on. So maybe there was a study being done, and I know the commissioner is very much aware of it. Maybe if this is a place, Commissioner, we should address that, a similar issue that exists in the duty-free space.
Yeah, noted.
What-
Okay, the next
Right.
section is on duty-free shopping procedure.
There you go.
Exactly. So you want to continue, please?
Subpart H, duty-free shop procedure. Clause 135, application.
Is your camera working at all? I know Hazel, yeah, just, they keep on WhatsApping me to say, ask people to turn the cameras on, because the PBC is trying, they're putting a product out there, right? We have gotten the agreement of everybody here and of Parliament and of Jamaican public in general to have the meetings digitally because of the environment we're in. The quid pro quo is that it is as much available to the public as it would otherwise have been, and having our cameras on when it is possible and feasible and technically makes sense to do so. All right, so go ahead.
Clause 135, application of customs procedures to duty-free shops. The provisions of this act apply to duty-free shops except as may otherwise be provided by the Duty-Free Shopping System Act. Subpart I, stores procedure. Clause 136, application and duration of stores procedure. 1. Stores that are on board a means of transport, when the means of transport enters Jamaica, shall, without need for the registration of a goods declaration, be subject to the stores procedure. 2. No goods may be taken on board a foreign-going vessel or foreign-going aircraft as stores for that vessel or aircraft unless those goods are declared and released for that purpose under the stores procedure. 3. A person who, in contravention of subsection 2, takes goods on board a foreign-going vessel or foreign-going aircraft commits an offense. Clause 137, acknowledgement of receipt of stores taken on board. The operator of a foreign-going vessel or foreign-going aircraft shall, in the manner prescribed by rules, acknowledge receipt of all stores taken on board the vessel or aircraft in Jamaica, and an operator who fails to do so commits an offense. Clause 138, sealing or securing stores. 1. When a foreign-going vessel or a foreign-going aircraft arrives at a customs-controlled port or customs-controlled airport, an officer may seal or otherwise secure on board the vessel or aircraft any stores that are under the stores procedure, including any stores in the personal possession of a crew member on board the vessel or aircraft. 2. Subsection 1 does not apply to stores in the personal possession of a crew member on board a foreign-going vessel or foreign-going aircraft, insofar as the quantity of those stores does not exceed such quantity as may be prescribed for the personal use of crew members on board foreign-going vessels or foreign-going aircraft while in Jamaica. 3. A person who, without the permission of the Commissioner, breaks any seal placed on stores under subsection 1 or interferes with stores otherwise secured under that subsection before the vessel or aircraft has departed from Jamaica commits an offense. 4. The carrier of a vessel or aircraft is responsible for ensuring that no offense under subsection 3 is committed in respect of any stores on board the vessel or aircraft. Clause 139, removal of stores from vessel or aircraft. 1. Stores under the stores procedure may not be removed from a foreign-going vessel or foreign-going aircraft except where expressly permitted, A, by the Commissioner, or B, under this Act. 2. The Commissioner may direct or allow any stores under the stores procedure on board a foreign-going vessel or foreign-going aircraft to be removed from the vessel or aircraft for storage elsewhere until the vessel or aircraft is ready to depart Jamaica, if the Commissioner is satisfied that storage elsewhere is necessary. 3. A person who, in contravention of this section, removes stores commits an offense. Clause 140, goods regarded as declared for home use. Where A, goods are used otherwise than as stores for a foreign-going vessel or foreign-going aircraft, or B, a seal placed on goods under section 138 is broken, or goods otherwise secured under that section are interfered with and are subsequently unaccounted for, duty and tax are payable as if the goods have been declared for home use. Subpart J, export procedure. Clause 141, application of export procedure. Goods shall be brought under the export procedure in any case where it is intended to permanently remove the goods from Jamaica. Clause 142, time of delivery of goods to place of export. 1. Goods shall not be delivered to their place of export unless a declaration in respect of the goods is registered and the Commissioner releases the goods for export, and a person who, in contravention of this section, delivers goods commits an offense. 2. Goods released by the Commissioner for export shall be delivered to the place for export within such time as may be prescribed by rules. 3. Notwithstanding subsections 1 and 2, the Commissioner may, if satisfied that exceptional circumstances so warrant, and subject to such terms and conditions as the Commissioner may impose, permits the A, delivery of goods to their place of export, or B, export of goods from Jamaica before a goods declaration is registered for the export of the goods. 4. Where permission for delivery or export is granted to a person under subsection 3, the person shall submit for registration a goods declaration in respect of the goods within 24 hours after such delivery or such export as the case may be. Clause 143, loading of goods destined for export on foreign-going vessel or foreign-going aircraft. 1. Goods destined for export may not be loaded onto a foreign-going vessel or foreign-going aircraft unless A, a declaration is registered in respect of the goods and the goods are released for export under the export procedure, or B, permission is given under this Act for the export of the goods without the registration of a declaration. 2. Subsection 1 does not apply to goods falling within a category of goods excluded under this Act from the requirement for a declaration. 3. A person who, in contravention of this section, loads goods commits an offense. Clause 144, offloading of goods destined for export. 1. Goods destined for export that are on board a foreign-going vessel or foreign-going aircraft shall not be offloaded or transferred to another vessel or aircraft in Jamaica, except A, in accordance with this act, or B, with the permission of the Commissioner. 2, a person who, in contravention of this section, offloads or transfers goods commits an offense. Clause 145, failure to export goods released for export. 1, if goods that are released for export are not exported within such time as may be specified by rules, A, the declarant shall, within 24 hours after the time specified for the departure of the vessel or aircraft, notify the Commissioner of 1, the failure to export the goods, and 2, the reasons for the failure, and B, the Commissioner may, whether notification under paragraph A has been given or not, 1, secure the goods or require the goods to be secured in such manner as the Commissioner may determine pending the export of the goods under the export procedure, or 2, issue such directions in respect of the goods as the Commissioner considers appropriate. 2, a declarant who fails to notify the Commissioner as required under subsection 1 commits an offense. Clause 146, exemption from duty and tax of goods cleared for export. 1, no import duty or tax shall be charged in respect of goods released under security for export to a place outside Jamaica or for use as ship stores in accordance with section 136. 2, subsection 1 shall not apply in any case where A, the exporter contravenes any customs law in relation to the goods or any condition of the security given for the release of the goods, or B, the Commissioner has reasonable grounds to believe that any deficiency in the quantity of the goods has arisen from illegal abstraction therefrom. 3, in any case falling within subsection 2, the declarant shall be liable to pay A, in any case falling within subsection 2A, the full duty and tax payable in respect of such of the goods as are unaccounted for, or B, in any case falling within subsection 2B, duty and tax on such portion of the goods as represents the amount of the deficiency in the quantity of the goods. Subpart K, temporary export procedure. Clause 147, goods applicable for temporary export procedure. 1, this subpart applies to goods if they A, fall within the prescribed category of goods for which the temporary export procedure may apply, and B, are of a nature that will make them, when eventually reimported, likely to be identified as the same goods that were exported. 2, notwithstanding any provision to the contrary, the Commissioner may permit goods to be temporarily exported in accordance with any applicable international agreement in force as regards Jamaica. Clause 148, duration of temporary export procedure. The temporary export procedure begins in relation to goods, A, in the case of goods that automatically come under the temporary export procedure by virtue of section 147 when goods leave Jamaica, or B, as from the time the goods are cleared and released for outright export, in any case where the temporary export procedure applies retrospectively by virtue of section 149 and is completed unless otherwise terminated under this act when the goods are released as goods reimported in the same state for home use. Clause 149, clearance and release of goods under temporary export procedure. 1, goods may be cleared as goods reimported into Jamaica in the same state for home use if the Commissioner is satisfied that A, the goods were previously exported from Jamaica, whether under the temporary export procedure or as goods cleared for outright export. B, the goods are identifiable as the same goods referred to in paragraph A. C, while outside Jamaica, the goods did not undergo any manufacture, processing, or repairs other than such maintenance in connection with their use outside Jamaica as is necessary due to normal wear and tear. And D, all conditions subject to which the goods were released for export have been complied with. The Commissioner may prescribe rules regarding the clearance and release of goods referred to in subsection 1 for home use, and such rules may provide for A, the proof to be furnished in support of the matters referred to in subsection 1, B, the information to be furnished where the importer claims a refund or drawback of import duty or other duty or tax reclaimed on the export of the goods, and C, where the matters referred to in subsection 1 are not established to the satisfaction of the Commissioner, the procedure and time applicable for obtaining the release of the goods for a customs procedure. Clause 150, goods under temporary export treated as cleared for outright export. Goods under temporary export shall be treated as cleared for outright export if A, the goods are not re-imported within the period applicable to the goods specified by rules. B, the goods upon their return to Jamaica are not declared as goods re-imported in the same state for home use. Or C, the Commissioner, upon not being satisfied as to the matter specified in section 149.1, refuses to release the goods as goods re-imported in the same state for home use. Subpart L, processing procedures. Clause 151, inward processing. Goods imported for inward processing shall be transported and stored in accordance with the terms and conditions of the authorization granted for those goods to be imported for inward processing, and all products obtained from the processing of those goods, A, shall be exported on the completion of the processing for which they were imported, and B, for the purposes of such export, shall be stored and transported in accordance with the terms and conditions of the authorization granted for those goods to be imported for inward processing. Clause 152, regulations regarding inward processing. 1, inward processing shall be conducted in the manner prescribed. 2, regulations made for the purpose of subsection 1 shall A, subject to section 155, specify the conditional relief from import duties that may be granted in respect of the goods imported for inward processing. B, provide for the collection of import duties on any products, including waste or scrap, derived from the processing or manufacture of goods admitted for inward processing and that are not exported. Or C, provide for the admission for inward processing of goods under any other customs procedure. D, specify the circumstances in which, other than the owner of the goods, may import goods for inward processing. E, provide for the identification of goods imported for inward processing. F, specify requirements for inputs and the process of manufacture of compensating products from goods imported for inward processing. G, provide for the grant of authorization for inward processing, the persons empowered to grant such authorization, and the conditions that may apply to such authorization. H, specify the manner in which operations permitted under the authorization for inward processing shall be carried out. I, set time limits for inward processing. J, provide for the termination of the inward processing of goods by exportation of their compensating products in one or more consignments. And K, provide for set-off against equivalent goods. 153, outward processing. The Commissioner may, in accordance with the regulations, give approval for goods in free circulation, being goods of a prescribed kind, to be exported for repair or processing abroad, and the resulting compensating product to be imported and released for home use with total or partial exemption from duty and tax. 154, regulations regarding outward processing. 1, Outward processing shall be conducted in the manner prescribed. 2. Regulations made for the purposes of subsection 1 shall A. Specify the circumstances in which prior authorization is required for outward processing and the proper officers empowered to grant such authorization. B. Fix rates of yield for outward processing in cases where a fixed rate is considered by the minister to be appropriate. C. Specify the kinds of goods that may be subjected to outward processing. D. Specify the description, quality, and quantity of the kinds of compensating products that may be derived from goods under outward processing and the rate of duty applicable to them. E. Specify the maximum time for which goods may remain outside Jamaica under outward processing and may provide for the commissioner to grant an extension of that time in appropriate circumstances. F. Permit compensating products derived from goods under outward processing to be imported through a customs office other than that through which the goods were exported for outward processing. G. Allow for compensating products derived from goods under outward processing to be imported in one or more consignments. H. Subject to section 155, provide for goods exported under outward processing to be imported exempt from import duty if the goods are imported in the same state in which they were exported, other than duty repaid or remitted in connection with the exportation of the goods for outward processing. I. Provide for the outward processing of goods to be terminated at the option of the declarant by the submission of a customs declaration for the clearance of the goods for outright export, subject to compliance with any applicable terms and conditions. J. Specify the extent of the exemption from import duty granted when compensating products derived from goods under outward processing are taken into home use and the method of calculating that exemption. And K. Provide for the transfer of ownership of goods under outward processing or their compensating products while under outward processing. Clause 155, rate of duty upon reimportation. 1. The provisions of subsections 2 to 5 shall apply where A. Goods, whether made in Jamaica or not, are 1. Of a kind that are liable to duty or tax if imported, and 2. Are exported and reimported. B. The duty or tax chargeable on those goods on their initial importation was duly paid, whether payment is made before or after the exportation. And C. A drawback of the duty or tax referred to in paragraph A was 1. Not made on exportation, or 2. Made and repaid by the commissioner. 2. If the goods have not been subjected to any processing abroad, the goods shall be exempt from duty and tax when they are cleared for home use on reimportation. 3. If the goods, at the time when they are declared for home use after reimportation, A. Are of the type that is liable to an import duty or tax ad valorem, B. Have been subjected to repair, renovation, or improvement while abroad, and C. Are unchanged in form and character after such repair, renovation, or improvement as the case may be, the goods shall be chargeable with the duty and tax as if the amount of the increase in their value attributable to the repair, renovation, or improvement as the case may be, or the whole value of the goods. 4. The rule shall prescribe the circumstances in which goods shall be considered as unchanged in form and character for the purposes of subsection 3C. 5. For the purposes of subsection 3, without prejudice to any powers of the commissioner under any customs law to ascertain the value of goods for the purpose of assessing duty and tax ad valorem, the sum, if any, contracted to be paid for the repair, renovation, or improvement of the goods as the case may be, shall be prima facie evidence of the amount of the increase in the value of goods attributable to the repair, renovation, or improvement. 6, subsections 3 and 5 shall not apply to a repair for the purpose of maintaining or placing goods in working order. 7, where the commissioner is satisfied that the repair, renovation, or replacement of goods occurred under warranty, the cost of the repair, renovation, or
Right,
replacement as
155.6. Was there?
Yes, Minister. So, yes, Chairman, so in relation to 155.6, the technical team, after looking at it closely, are of the view we're recommending that it be considered for deletion. We were unable to think of a circumstance where we could have a repair that's not really for a purpose of maintenance or placing things in working order, and concerns in relation to repairing goods that are under warranty, which is very much a legitimate concern, were, to our mind, addressed at clause 155.7, which Ms. Corbett has not yet read. And so we are recommending that this clause be deleted, this subclause.
So just explain the impact of deleting it. This scheme is about.
It's about goods that have been that were imported in Jamaica and are then subsequently sent overseas for repair or for some processing to be done. In terms of focusing on repair, what it would mean is, let us say one were to purchase, let's take a bicycle, and something has gone wrong with the bicycle and it needs to be sent overseas for repair works to be done. Once it goes overseas and the repair is done, let's say the value of the repair to the bicycle is $100, but the bicycle itself totally is valued at $1,000. When the bicycle is being re-imported into Jamaica, the value of the goods will be the value of the repair. So customs will be using the $100 as the value and not the total $1,000 as the value of the bicycle. And that will be used to assess duties and taxes. And so the person will be paying the duties and taxes on the value, on the cost of the repairs, not anything else. So subclause 6 was seeking to exclude a particular type of repair work. But when we looked at it, the purpose of repairs is to put things in good working order. That's the nature of it.
Okay, I see what, wait, let's just examine it a little bit. I believe clause 6 is originally there to take account of, big pieces of equipment, for example, that need regular servicing, and that servicing is not available in Jamaica. So it's not that they've been damaged, right? But it needs to be serviced. So an aircraft, a plane, or some other piece of equipment. What would happen in those routine maintenance examples? And that's probably a bad example, but there could be, motor machinery that routinely has to be serviced and is serviced abroad and then re-imported.
Well, if clause 150, well, I guess perhaps it would be covered. One could interpret 155.6 as allowing for that.
No, but that is why I think, I think in deleting it, what we would be saying is that if you, for cases where there are machinery that need to be serviced outside of Jamaica, you've already paid a duty to bring them in, and you have to re-export it to service it once a year or once every 2 years, once every 3 years. The idea is that you should be able to do that, without friction. If it's damage and you're substantially changing the thing, then okay, yes, you pay duty on that fee that you've paid to, reform the deformed thing. But should you be paying duty on what can be regarded as maintenance, which is why it says to a repair for the purpose of maintaining goods in working order. Maybe you take out the or placing.
Right, perhaps, yes,
Take out the
Mr.
or
Perhaps-
placing, but I don't think you should delete it. Just thinking
Mhm.
on top of, I don't know how other people think. So if you had for a repair for the purpose of maintaining goods in working order. What are your thoughts?
Well, we can understand that scenario, Minister. Definitely the words or placing would, as you've indicated, would need to be deleted to better narrow and define the scope of the provision. I think the question would be whether we would consider it to be appropriate in those circumstances not to charge duty on the cost of the maintenance work that's been done on the item. And I would also consider, if that is the policy decision or the direction which the committee is inclined to go, to also perhaps we will have a little further discussions with CPC to see if there's anything more we need to put in to better clarify that intention, to make it clear that we're only referring to routine maintenance.
Yes, please go ahead. Who is coming in?
Marlon Low.
Yes, please. Thank you.
So, Minister, the situation that in terms of servicing, I think that would be covered in Section 2, because the essence of the provision is saying that if there's no change in value, there will be no duties and taxes. So if it's a case where you're just servicing and you have not added anything, that will be covered in terms of Section 2. If goods
But
have
you
not
said
been
any processing abroad. I mean, if you change the filters and, you know, is that processing?
No, but you wouldn't be adding value in that respect. So when it comes in back, it will be the same value. So the duties are only payable if they are additional value. So in terms of routine maintenance or servicing, based on Section 2, there should be no duties and taxes.
So if something broke down and it got fixed, then you'd have to, you're saying that is improving the value?
That may not depend on what is used to replace it, if it is something improved.
See, here's the thing, here are the considerations, right? We want, Jamaica is an island. We don't have a lot of expertise at this point in time in certain areas of engineering and, you know, machine repair, etc. But we want Jamaica to be a place where the capital stock here can increase over time, so we can have more and more machinery here. That's right. A part of how you grow is that you have human capital stock, and you have human capital, and you have capital stock, which is financial assets and physical assets, capital. But if you can't I'm just thinking that the idea of being able to repair things overseas, you are saying to me that under 2, if you don't improve the value of it, then you're covered. Right?
Right, Minister.
Sorry, Minister and Mr. Lowe, if I might come in, just to be clear. And I recall when we were in LegCom on this issue, that we had gone around quite a few times on the matter, including on whether, so for example, I buy a watch which has been imported. The watch is not working. It therefore is of questionable value, if any. It's exported for repair because it is a type of watch for which the parts are not available locally. So it's exported for repair. And brought back in. The watch is the same. It had fallen in value when it was no longer working. but it has retained its value as a result of the repair, or it has reasserted its value. You're saying that the processing, the process of repair is a change in value, an improvement in value, even if I paid duty on it when it was brought in already. It's not increased in value. It has just retained the value on which I had originally paid duty. The scheme of this clause as it is now is to still charge me on the cost of the repair as prima facie, unless you assess it as costing more because it's found online somewhere else now being sold as more than I paid for it.
So, Madam Attorney General, there's a question as to at what point.
No, this is Foreign Affairs, sorry.
Member Johnson, sorry about that. There is a question now as to at what point would that watch that you have repaired is now a new watch coming in based on the extent of the repair. And that is where the issue of the increase in value, it would have been useless possibly in some cases without the repair. You have sent it back and it could have been substantial and material parts that are now put on the watch. And the issue is whether or not this is a new watch or a watch that is simply being maintained, which is different from what the chairman was saying. And so the principle has always been that in terms of the additional value, that is where duties and taxes are payable. If that were not the case, then at some point it would require maybe a policy position to put a cap on the extent of the value if we were to depart from that, because it will now become difficult to distinguish between a new watch as distinct from, based on what has been done to it, as distinct from minor repairs, maintenance, servicing.
Sorry to have moved away from your point, Mr. Chairman. I just wanted to clarify my understanding of how this clause was now intended to work and what it is the extent
I
to
see your point. I see your point, and it's the, we want Jamaica to be a dynamic island where
yes, whether it is a tractor or a watch.
Or a watch, yeah.
May I come in on this too, Minister, while we're thinking?
Mm-hmm.
I do. So the issue is a little bit more complicated, particularly where the warranties are not honored locally because, our consumer protection laws are badly in need of change. But what I find is that many product and service providers are not stocking parts locally. And I think it is something that we may have to legislate on to require a minimum amount of stocking where they are the product and after sale service provider for certain items. But I mean, from the time the bill was at a different stage on this clause, it really is a little bit of a naughty one. We have to design the policy and law in a way where you encourage compliance with it. And I certainly find it problematic if, for example, you have a product which require repair and the part is not locally available and it has to be sent abroad, and then for it to come back and you are required to pay as if it's new. I mean, putting myself in the shoe of the ordinary consumer Jamaican, it is something that I think needs some further thought through.
Yeah, I for the time being, I would prefer to leave 6 in, Ms. Edwards.
Very well, Chairman. But
I know that you had a point in it, that's why I allowed you to make it.
Yes.
But for the time being.
Very well, Chairman. AG, just to confirm, yes, indeed, we had spent quite a bit of time on this clause, and we sought to address the issue of the warranty at subclause 7. I'm not sure if we've addressed it fully, to a satisfactory level, but the issue of the repairs under the warranty, we sought to expressly provide that once the repair has been done under a warranty, then those goods will be allowed to go out for repair and come back in without any duties being charged on the cost of the repair work.
Right, so that would be addressing one limb of the problem.
Only
And
one limb.
I think in respect of those that remain under warranty, that is adequately provided for, but it is where the warranty period has expired, but the goods require maintenance, because some items will require regular maintenance in order for their value and their use to remain proper or up to date. But so if I have an earring that I have had broken, and any item of jewelry, for example, or something else, it's just.
Yeah, so let's leave it for now, please.
Noted, Chairman.
Yeah. All right, so let's continue. I guess you'd read 7.
Where the commissioner is satisfied that the repair, renovation, or replacement of goods occurred under warranty, the cost of the repair, renovation, or replacement, as the case may be, shall not be taken into account in determining the value of the goods for the purposes of this section. 156, submission of goods declaration for a processing procedure. 1, unless authorization is granted by the commissioner for goods to be placed under processing procedure, A, a person shall not submit a goods declaration for the goods to be placed under that processing procedure, and B, the goods shall not be placed under that processing procedure. 2, a goods declaration for goods to be placed under processing procedure shall reference in the manner prescribed by rules the authorization for the goods to be placed under that processing procedure. 3, where imported goods under processing procedure are used for a purpose other than the processing of the kind for which the goods were released, duty and tax shall be payable on those goods as though they have been declared and released for home use. Clause 157, records, reports, and verification thereof. 1, the declarant in relation to imported goods under processing procedure under this subpart shall keep records and submit regular reports to the commissioner in respect of the goods and their compensating products in such form and manner as may be prescribed in rules, and the declarant who fails to do so commits an offense. 2, an officer may at any time during an inspection under this act, A, examine the records kept under subsection 1, B, take stock of imported goods cleared and released for processing procedure, their compensating products, and any other goods present on the premises where the imported goods are processed, and C, take any other action authorized under this act. 3, if during any stock taking under subsection 2B, imported goods under processing procedure under this subpart are found to be A, greater than the quantity, weight, or volume that should be on hand at the premises where the goods are processed, the excess shall be taken as goods in stock, or B, less than the quantity, weight, or volume that should be on hand at the premises where the goods are processed, the shortfall shall be dealt with as goods unaccounted for. Clause 158, subcontracting of processing operations. 1, the declarant in respect of goods under processing procedure may, with the prior written approval of the commissioner, appoint a third party to undertake any aspect of such processing. 2, an application for approval under subsection 1 shall be made A, to the commissioner before the goods are delivered to the third party, and B, in the form and manner and contain such particulars as may be prescribed by rules. 3, a person who undertakes processing or appoints a third party to undertake processing without the approval required under subsection 1 commits an offense. Subpart M, procedures applicable to special economic zones. Clause 159, application of Act to special economic zone goods. 1, the provisions of this Act apply to all goods entering within or exiting a special economic zone, except as may be otherwise provided by the Special Economic Zones Act. 2, the rules shall make provision in respect of the customs standards, procedures, and requirements applicable to special economic zones. Clause 160, removal of goods on closure of zone. 1, in the event of the closure of a special economic zone, all goods located at the zone shall be removed to another special economic zone or placed under another customs procedure within such time as shall be specified by rules. 2, where subsection 1 is not complied with, duty and tax become immediately payable in respect of the goods. Part 6, expedited clearance and release of goods. Subpart A, provisional clearance. 161, release of goods on incomplete or provisional goods declaration. 1, a person seeking to clear goods for a customs procedure may submit a provisional goods declaration in respect of the goods. 2, where a provisional goods declaration submitted under subsection 1 is registered, the commissioner may A, accept the provisional goods declaration and release the goods to the declarant. B, accept the provisional goods declaration subject to such conditions as the commissioner shall notify to the declarant, and release the goods upon the fulfillment of those conditions. Or C, refuse the provisional goods declaration if the commissioner has reasonable grounds for the refusal. Clause 162, contents of provisional goods declaration. A provisional goods declaration shall contain all the information necessary to ensure that all restrictions imposed by law and all requirements of the customs laws have been complied with in relation to the goods. Clause 163, release of goods cleared on the provisional goods declaration. 1, subject to the provisions of this Act concerning the release of goods, goods that are cleared under provisional goods declaration shall be released as if the goods were cleared under standard goods declaration. 2, the commissioner may refuse to grant goods under this section, refuse to release goods under this section if a condition imposed under section 161 in goods is not met. The customs laws regarding the clearance and release of restricted goods shall be complied with at the time a provisional goods declaration is submitted to the commissioner. Clause 164, supplementary goods declaration. A person who registers a provisional goods declaration in respect of goods shall, in such time, form, and manner as may be prescribed by rules, submit to the commissioner a supplementary goods declaration in relation to those goods. 2, a supplementary goods declaration shall A, confirm or correct as far as necessary for the provision of accurate information, the information in the provisional goods declaration, and B, be supported by all outstanding supporting documents. 3, a supplementary goods declaration and the provisional goods declaration to which it relates shall, for the purposes of this Act and any other applicable law, be regarded as constituting a single goods declaration that took effect on the date when the provisional goods declaration was registered. 165, duty and tax payable in respect of goods cleared provisionally. The duty and tax payable on goods that are cleared provisionally in accordance with this part for a customs procedure that renders the goods subject to the payment of duty and tax shall be A, assessed at the date of registration of the provisional goods declaration, and B, paid in accordance with rules. Subpart B, simplified clearance and release of goods. 166, application.
Maybe before we move on, just to bring to the committee's attention the importance of what we've just gone through in terms of the provisional goods declarations, which essentially allow instances where goods are imported, but the person may not have all the information or so, but nevertheless, the person is able to go ahead, obtain clearance of the goods, and then later submit the additional information to customs. And this is something that is part of international best practice. It allows goods to move more quickly through the customs processing.
And so that's an improvement that we can point to, huh?
Well, it is something that customs
That
does
we do
know.
know, but
we do have some of it now.
Yeah.
So this is really expressly putting in law what we already do. And it is something that the revised Kyoto Convention and the WTO Trade Facilitation Agreement requires that we have clearly in legislation.
Thank you for that. Continue.
161. The Commissioner may, without more, approve the release of goods A for a customs procedure in accordance with such simplified clearance and release procedures as may be prescribed by rules.
I am not sure if it's on my side, but Ms. Corbett is coming in a bit muffled or warped.
Also on my side, so it's pretty rough, yes.
So Crystal, I'm not sure if it's covering you.
You might want to reel that. You might want to dial back in.
I'm not sure if something is covering your machine where the audio is. If you may probably speak again. Oh, it's bad. It's bad. It's bad.
Can somebody take over temporarily? Crystal, you want to sign off and sign back on?
I will take over until she comes back in.
Yeah.
So unfortunately, I don't have my video. I don't have mine, right? Subpart B, simplified clearance and release of goods. Clause 166, application for simplified clearance. 1, the Commissioner may, without more, approve the release of goods A for a customs procedure in accordance with such simplified clearance and release procedures as may be prescribed by rules, or B, on acceptance by the Commissioner of a simplified goods declaration, transport document, or another document that may be used as a goods declaration under the procedures referred to in paragraph A. 2, the Commissioner may, on any reasonable grounds, refuse to release goods through the use of simplified clearance procedures. 3, subject to subsection 5, and without limiting the generality of subsection 1, rules made under subsection 1 may, A, specify the kinds and categories of goods that may be cleared and released in accordance with the simplified clearance and release procedures provided for in this subpart. B, specify the kinds of other documents that may be submitted in lieu of a standard goods declaration, such as 1, a transport document issued in respect of the goods. 2, any supporting documents issued in respect of the goods. Or 3, any other documents required to be submitted to the Commissioner under this Act in respect of the goods. C, prescribe the minimum information that a simplified goods declaration or other document in lieu of a standard goods declaration shall contain. D, specify the manner and the time within which a simplified goods declaration or other document in lieu of a standard goods declaration shall be submitted under the simplified clearance procedure. E, subject to the provisions of this subpart, provide for exemptions in respect of goods cleared under this subpart from any one or more other provisions of this Act applicable to the standard procedure for the clearance and release of goods. F, prescribe any other relevant matters. 4, different simplified clearance requirements may be prescribed under subsection 3 for different categories of persons or goods. 5, the minister may make regulations providing for simplified entry and exit and customs processing and reporting procedures for A, small vessels, and B, vessels or aircraft for private use. (167) The duty and tax payable on goods that are cleared under this subpart for customs procedure that renders the goods subject to the payment of duty and tax shall be assessed as at the date on which the simplified goods declaration or other document in lieu of a standard goods declaration in respect of the goods is registered, and at the rate of duty and tax applicable to the goods on that date.
I'll share my screen while we wait for
Oh.
Crystal, just so that others can follow. Well, let me see if it works.
I believe she's waiting to be, okay.
Okay.
She's waiting to be readmitted. Yes, thank you, Minister, because I know it can be difficult. 168. Part 7, clearance and release of postal articles. Clause 168, clearance of postal articles. 1. In this part, postal article has the meaning assigned to it by the Post Office Act. 2. Postal articles, whether imported or destined for export, shall be cleared for an applicable customs procedure unless exempted from clearance by any customs law. 3. The provisions of this Act regarding the standard clearance and release of imported goods shall apply, subject to subsection 4 and the other provisions of this part, to the clearance and release of imported postal articles. If a postal article with a customs value not exceeding such amount as shall be prescribed is sought to be cleared for home use or outright export, the Commissioner may regard the postal declaration or any other document accompanying that postal article to be a goods declaration. 5. Subsection 4 shall not apply to any postal article in respect of which the exporter thereof intends to apply for a drawback of duty and tax. 169. Customs examination of postal articles. 1. Subject to the provisions of the Post Office Act, the Commissioner may cause such number of proper officers as the Commissioner considers fit to attend at any post office for the purpose of examining postal articles. 2. On an examination under subsection 1, the Postmaster General shall cause all postal articles to be presented to the proper officers, together with the postal declarations completed by or on behalf of the consignor of the postal articles. 170. payment of duty and tax to Commissioner. The Postmaster General shall pay over to the Commissioner at such times and in such manner as shall be determined by the Commissioner the duty and tax collected in respect of dutiable postal articles. 171, application of provision regarding prohibited or restricted goods. The provisions of this Act concerning prohibited or restricted goods shall apply to a postal article. Chairman,
Go ahead.
I wish to just pause to make an observation. Since we had prepared this piece of legislation, there have been a number of changes and a number of developments internationally, particularly with the Universal Postal Union, and particularly so far as it concerns advance, arrival, and departure information for postal articles. A number of countries have or are now in the process. For example, the EU, as at February of this year, I think in the US, it would have been January of this year, have implemented legislation providing for advance arrival information for postal articles. Customs and PTD have been in discussions in terms of looking at the systems and finalizing the language. I wanted to just flag to indicate that the technical team intends to recommend an insertion to treat with that. Obviously, the details will be in rules, but we intend to make a recommendation to treat with that. We are finalizing our discussions with Post, and we'll of course finalize the discussions with the CPC to put forward the precise language. But those are changes that have been happening in 2021. It's anticipated that by 2022, Post and Telecommunications will be hosting this information in terms of the advance arrival information that they will be accessing from the Universal Postal Union. And Customs and PTD are in discussions about integrating the systems so that Customs can have access to that information. We've started getting some access in the past few months, and we intend to move forward with integration by 2022. So I wanted to just flag that as a development that we will be making a recommendation for an insertion to treat with.
Okay, thank you for mentioning that. We'll share again. There we go.
All right, part 13. No,
Part
what am I saying? Part 13, part 8. Part 8, posting trade. 172, activity constituting posting trade or carriage by sea. For the purposes of this Act, A, posting trade means the carriage of goods in Jamaica by sea or air from one customs controlled area to another customs controlled area. And B, any vessel or aircraft shall, while so employed in the carriage of goods, be deemed to be a coasting vessel or coasting aircraft, respectively. 173, goods that may be carried in coasting vessel or aircraft. 1, only goods that have been loaded at a customs controlled area to be carried coastwise shall be carried in a coasting vessel or coasting aircraft. And a person who carries goods coastwise in contravention of this section commits an offense. 2, notwithstanding subsection 1, the Commissioner may, subject to such terms and conditions as the Commissioner considers appropriate, permit A coasting vessel or coasting aircraft to carry goods by way of coasting trade, even if the vessel or aircraft is also carrying goods from a place outside Jamaica that have not yet been cleared in Jamaica. B, goods, 1, brought by another foreign-going vessel or foreign-going aircraft to a place in Jamaica from a place outside Jamaica, and 2, that are consigned to and intended to be delivered to another place in Jamaica to be transferred to a coasting vessel or coasting aircraft for carriage by way of coasting trade to that other place in Jamaica before clearance of the goods in Jamaica. Or C, a foreign-going vessel or foreign-going aircraft that has begun to load goods for exportation to or for use as stores on a destination outside Jamaica to carry the goods by way of coasting trade until that loading is completed. 174. Circumstances in which carriage may not be deemed to be coasting trade. If the condition mentioned in subsection 2 is met, the proper officer may permit a foreign-going vessel or foreign-going aircraft, A, having on board cargo intended to be delivered at more than one customs-controlled area, or B, intending to load at a customs-controlled area cargo destined for a place outside Jamaica, to convey goods from any customs-controlled area at which the vessel or aircraft discharges its cargo under paragraph A, or loads its cargo under paragraph B, as the case may be, to the places of destination in Jamaica of the vessel or aircraft, without being regarded as a coasting vessel or coasting aircraft. 2, the condition is that the proper officer must be satisfied that the goods on board the vessel or aircraft and destined for a place outside Jamaica are kept completely separated from the goods on board the vessel or aircraft that are destined for discharge in Jamaica. 175, carriage of persons coastwise. The carriage of persons, whether passengers, officers, or crew, and whether or not in a coasting vessel or coasting aircraft, shall be conducted in accordance with regulations made under this Act and in accordance with all other applicable laws.
You want to comment on the comments that came in on sections 173 and 74 from some stakeholders about the process to obtain the necessary approvals?
Yes, yes, Minister, I will. In relation to 172, in terms of the activities, stakeholders had raised concerns indicating that these provisions, and it was 172 along with clauses 91, 92, 95, which deals with the transit, transshipment, and transit to export. Stakeholders had raised concerns that these provisions create artificial distinctions and in terms of distinguishing between the movement of goods between local ports and between local and international ports. At 173, stakeholders had also raised some concerns that the requirement for permission may jeopardize the speed at which the activity is undertaken, because of course persons required to obtain the relevant approvals, and they requested clarification as to how such permissions would be considered and processed.
And what is your response?
The response in relation to, I mean, obviously, Minister, I think for us, we looked at the fact that as an island, there are particular concerns that arise with movement of goods along the coast. And so from the technical team's perspective, there was value in having rules that specifically treat with movement of goods along the coast. We recognize that there will be international vessels, as investors coming in from overseas, they will have on board cargo. Let's say a vessel may come in at the port of Kingston. It has on board cargo that is intended for Montego Bay, and it will therefore be moving along the coast with those goods. And that vessel may also wish to take on cargo in Kingston that it will then be transporting to Montego Bay. And we sought to treat with that at clause 173 which indicates that the commissioner may permit this activity to occur. We also want to indicate that when it comes to permission that's granted under the Act, we are not always talking about permission on a case-by-case basis. In fact, when you look at the concept of authorizations, we are provided that there could be instances when authorization is a general authorization. So a person may have permission to undertake a particular activity for a particular period of time. We're not looking at always granting it on a case-by-case basis. Though, of course, there will be instances where it will be necessary to treat with it that way. So we are satisfied that the relevant provisions are there to allow this regime to be implemented quite efficiently. And we do have a carriage coastwise process now. And as far as I'm aware, it functions with reasonable efficiency.
But what about the part that says, what about the second? I don't know if the critique on the time and the paperwork.
Yes. Well, remember, Minister, all of this information is going to be submitted electronically. All of this processing is happening, and we also have the advance information. So again, before a vessel actually engages in the activity, this information will come into customs and can be processed and the approval granted so that the activity can continue efficiently. To our mind, approvals for coastwise movement is really no different from approvals for any other customs regime. All of it happening electronically, and we think efficiently, and we think we have in the legislation the mechanisms to allow us to implement efficiently.
Okay. All right, I just want to turn to ventilate. All right, let's move.
Just a second, Minister. I sent a note to Commissioner or to the tech team to readmit Miss Crystal Corbett, please. She has been waiting.
She can take over.
She has been waiting. She's not here?
All right, so you want me to hand over to you?
Yes.
All right, go ahead.
I will hand over the reading to her as well.
Where are we in terms of the clause?
We're just starting part 9. Clause 176, yes.
Are you hearing me clearly now?
Yes, we are. I believe so.
Yes, we are.
Part 9, wrecked, damaged, destroyed, or unaccounted for goods. Clause 176, application of this part. 1, this part applies to imported goods that are wrecked, damaged, destroyed, or otherwise unaccounted for before the goods are cleared or released for a customs procedure. 2, this part does not apply to goods that are wrecked, damaged, destroyed, or otherwise unaccounted for, A, while or after being imported, or before or while being exported in contravention of entry or exit requirements as set out in Part 3, or B, goods or compensating products that are seized or confiscated. 177, notification of goods damaged, destroyed, or unaccounted for. 1, a person referred to in subsection 2 shall, in such form and manner, and within such time as may be prescribed by rules, notify the commissioner if goods to which this part applies are damaged, destroyed, or otherwise unaccounted for, And if the person fails to do so, the person commits an offense. 2, the person is A, any person who was in physical control of the goods when the goods were damaged, destroyed, or otherwise unaccounted for, or B, the declarant, or if there is no declarant, the importer or exporter, as the case may be. 3, where a notification in relation to goods that are damaged, destroyed, or otherwise unaccounted for is accompanied by documentary proof establishing to the satisfaction of the commissioner that the damage, destruction, or failure to account is due to a justifiable cause as prescribed by rules, A, the commissioner may direct that 1, the declarant requests, in accordance with section 72, the withdrawal of the goods declaration in respect of the goods, if all the goods covered by the declaration were damaged, destroyed, or otherwise unaccounted for, or 2, the existing goods declaration submitted in respect of the goods be amended to exclude the damaged, destroyed, or otherwise unaccounted for goods, if only part of the goods covered by the declaration was damaged, destroyed, or otherwise unaccounted for. B, any duty and tax payable but not yet paid on the goods by virtue of that declaration shall no longer be payable in respect of the goods that are damaged, destroyed, or otherwise unaccounted for, unless otherwise provided by the law regulating that duty and tax. C, any duty and tax already paid in respect of the goods that are damaged, destroyed, or otherwise unaccounted for pursuant to that declaration may, unless otherwise provided by the law regulating that duty and tax, be refunded to the person who paid the duty and tax. And D, goods that are damaged, destroyed, or otherwise unaccounted for, by which are salvageable in whole or in part, shall within such time as may be prescribed by rules, 1, be cleared for customs procedure as may be permissible in the circumstances, or 2, be exported or destroyed under customs supervision at the expense of a person referred to in subsection 2. 4, subsection 5 applies if A, the commissioner is not notified in accordance with subsection 1 in respect of goods for which this part applies. B, the commissioner is not satisfied as to the documentary proof submitted under subsection 3. Or C, no documentary proof is submitted for the purposes of subsection 3. 5, if this subsection applies, A, any duty and tax that was payable on the goods before they were damaged, destroyed, or otherwise unaccounted for remain payable as if the goods were not damaged, destroyed, or otherwise unaccounted for. And B, the duty and tax already paid on the goods is not refundable. 178, application to destroy goods. 1, the declarant, or if there is no declarant, the importer of goods that are not in free circulation may apply to the commissioner to have the goods destroyed under customs supervision. 2, where an application under subsection 1 is granted, the goods shall be destroyed under customs supervision in accordance with the conditions, if any, specified by the commissioner in the particular case. 3, where a person who makes an application under subsection 1 intends to utilize any waste or scrap remaining after the goods are destroyed, being waste or scrap derived from imported goods, that person shall A, so specify in the form, and B, submit a goods declaration to clear the waste or scrap for a customs procedure within the time specified by rules. 4, for the purposes of assessment of duty and tax, the rate of duty and tax applicable to waste or scrap cleared under subsection 3B shall be the rate of duty and tax applicable on the date that the goods declaration in respect of the waste or scrap is registered. 5, rules may prescribe the information to be included with an application under subsection 1 and the form and manner of the application. 179, RECs. 1, a person in possession of a REC shall, as soon as is reasonably practicable, if required to do so, deliver the REC to the commissioner. 2, any REC that constitutes goods that are not in free circulation shall be dealt with in such manner as may be prescribed by rules. 3. Any wreck that constitutes salvageable, damaged, or undamaged goods that are not in free circulation shall be dealt with in accordance with the provisions of this Act applicable to such goods. Part 10, authorizations. Subpart A, electronic customs system. Clause 180, establishment of an authorization to use customs system. 1. The Commissioner may establish an electronic system for any of the following purposes. A, the communication of any document or information that is required or authorized to be provided under the customs laws by any person to the Commissioner or by the Commissioner to any person. B, the payment or collection of customs duties, taxes, charges, and other amounts collectible by the Commissioner. C, expediting the process of dealing with the importation and exportation of goods and the movement of persons entering and leaving Jamaica, or any other purpose connected with the conduct of customs business. 2, no person other than an officer shall use the customs system unless that person has been authorized by the Commissioner to use the customs system. 3, for the purposes of subsection 2, a customs broker licensed under this Act shall be deemed to be authorized by the Commissioner to use the customs system, A, during the period of the validity of the license, B, except at any time when the license is suspended. 4, the registration of a goods declaration shall lapse if the declarant fails within the time applicable under the customs laws to pay or provide security for duty and tax assessed in respect of the goods, or to submit a supplementary goods declaration in any case where a supplementary goods declaration is required under Section 164. 5, where the registration of a goods declaration lapses under subsection 4, the Commissioner is entitled to cause any record of the declaration to be deleted. Subpart B, powers of registration, certification, or other authorization. Clause 181, rules concerning registration. 1, where any form of registration is required under this Act, rules may prescribe A, the form, manner, and content of applications for such registration and the supporting documents that may be required therefore. B, the grounds for refusal of such registration and for the suspension or revocation of such registration. C, the terms and conditions applicable to such registration. And D, any other matters that the Commissioner considers necessary for the operation of this subpart. 2, the Commissioner may prescribe rules requiring cargo aggregators to be registered. Clause 182, certified status. 1, the Commissioner may confer a certified status on any person falling within such requirements as may be prescribed by rules if the Commissioner is satisfied that the person A, has a record of compliance with customs laws and revenue laws, and B, has the ability to comply with such requirements as may be prescribed by rules. 2, the conferment of certified status under this section shall entitle the person on whom the status is conferred to such facilitation with regard to customs controls in respect of any one or more of the following, as shall be specified by the Commissioner in the instrument conferring the status. A, security and safety. B, simplified customs procedures such as 1, release of goods under provision of the minimum information necessary to identify the goods and permit subsequent completion of a goods declaration in respect of the goods. 2, clearance of goods at the declarant's premises or such other place as may be approved by the Commissioner. 3, submission of a single goods declaration for all imports or exports by the declarant over a stated period. 4, waiver of the assurances required under Section 32 for the operation of a temporary storage facility. 5, such other special procedures as may be provided for by rules. 3. Subject to this section, rules shall provide for A, the procedure and requirements for the conferment of certified status, which may include participation in a program for the conferment of the status. B, the duration of such conferment. C, different categories of certified status. D, the types of facilitation that may be specified under subsection 2. E, consultation with and the provision of information to customs authorities of other countries in respect of the conferment of the certified status. And F, any other matters connected therewith. 4. The Commissioner shall continuously monitor the compliance of a person on whom certified status is conferred with the customs laws and the requirements, terms and conditions of the conferment, and A, the conferment may be suspended or withdrawn in the event of non-compliance, and B, the person on whom the status is conferred shall, as soon as is reasonably practicable, notify the Commissioner of any change in circumstances which may affect compliance as mentioned in paragraph E or fulfillment of the requirements for that status. 5. A person may at any time hold one or more categories of certified status. 6. Without prejudice to the generality of subsections 1 to 5, the status of authorized economic operator under the provisions of this section shall be construed as a category of certified status. 7. A person ordinarily resident in Jamaica may apply to the Commissioner in the manner prescribed by rules for conferment of the status of authorized economic operator, and the Commissioner may grant the application if satisfied that the applicant meets the requirements set out in subsection 8, and after consultation with such other competent authorities as may be specified for that purpose by the rules. 8. The requirements for the conferment of the status of authorized economic operator are that the Commissioner must be satisfied that the person has A, a proven record of compliance with customs laws and revenue laws, B, satisfactory system of managing commercial records, and where appropriate, transport documents that allows for appropriate customs control, C, proven financial solvency, D, the requisite standard of competence and professional qualifications directly related to the activity concerned, and E, appropriate security and safety standards. 9, the Commissioner may confer certified status on a person on the application of that person in accordance with rules if the Commissioner is satisfied that the conferment is appropriate, having regard to any reciprocal arrangements which Jamaica has with any other jurisdiction. 10, in this section, revenue laws means any law concerning revenue as defined by the Revenue Administration Act.
Mr. Chairman?
Go ahead.
Yes, I wanted to just emphasize the importance of, to point out the importance of this provision.
Mm-hmm.
Jamaica has had an authorized economic operator program for some time in relation to importers.
Mm-hmm.
But of course, the AO program can encapsulate a number of other players in the trading industry, such as, of course, exporters. And in having it put in the legislation, not only are we complying with the international best practice, but it lays the foundation for us to secure reciprocal treatment for our AOs. So when, for example, a person has been designated as an AO in Jamaica, and they're moving goods, exporting goods to the United States or to other countries, Jamaica can now, having it in our legislation gives us the leverage to be able to enter into international agreements that allow our AOs to enjoy reciprocal treatment, which means that when they're engaging with the customs administrations of the other countries, they can also enjoy the special facilitation, which promotes business and we think economic growth for our people. So this has been a very important provision for customs. And not just the AAO program, which is sort of the gold standard when it comes to certified status, but we can also implement other provisions, other programs that reward compliance. And that is something that Customs is committed to, that those who are in compliance with customs laws should get real benefits in terms of having expedited clearance, enjoying other special facilitation from customs because of that record of compliance.
Okay, thank you. I think Shanae Cunningham had her hand up.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just, for clause 181, there were comments from the Shipping Association of Jamaica in the matrix, and I'm not sure if those were addressed in the reading. There were some suggestions made by them that I think the committee would have to look at to decide, or to formally decide what they were going to treat with the recommendation from the Shipping Association on 181. I don't know if the person controlling has the matrix handy. I don't know if you want me to just read out what it says in the matrix, if to save time.
Go ahead.
Sure, okay. So in the matrix, it says, based on this clause, parties, including shipping agents, should be registered by Jamaica Customs. The association is of the view that the regulatory registration of shipping agents is an unnecessary imposition. As an alternative, an industry regulation model is being proposed. The Act could provide for shipping agents and NVOCC agents to be registered with the association. The verification of detailed company documents and oversight of training to meet government requirements could be handled by private bodies such as the association. It is to be noted that applicants would not have to become members of the association in order to be registered. Currently, shipping agents are registered with the Registrar of Companies of Jamaica and Tax Administration Jamaica. Shipping lines appoint their agents who submit their letters to the Commissioner of Customs, declaring they will act as agents for particular principles. The association is of the view that there is no reason to change this. It is also the view of the association that there is enough safeguard of business legitimacy.
Okay, thank you. I remember they presented on that. Commissioner or Mr. Edwards?
Well, Chairman, I think the first thing to note is that the provision 181 subclause 2 deals with cargo aggregators and not shipping agents, right? So strictly what is there now, to the extent that a shipping agent is also a cargo aggregator, then this may be something that is required of them. But the provision is speaking to cargo aggregators, and it was within the context, recall that we have several other provisions that deal with cargo aggregators being required to submit advance arrival information, because it is recognized that these persons have critical information that is important to the supply chain security. And it is important that customs knows who these persons are. They are engaging with the trading public. They are moving goods, which means that whole know your customer obligation. They're engaging with the customs system to provide reports and information to customs. And so from customs perspective, it is important that we know who those persons are, and we are able to make contact with them if that becomes necessary for enforcement or other purposes. In terms of the industry model that the shipping agents are proposing, We're not of the view that that's something that customs could endorse, certainly in the legislation, because that would have to do with a private entity, the Shipping Association of Jamaica, that will be dealing with that. And we're not of the view that that will be within our remit. If any provisions are being put forward for licensing or registration, into our mind, that would need to be something that would be regulated by a government authority. And so that's not a proposal that we were in favor of.
Yeah, I agree. This was not an issue that I would have considered hanging. We when they appeared before in that phase of the Joint Select Committee's life, I think we'd given that answer to them, that, you know, the registration here or the regulation here needs to be with a government entity. Okay, we are 180. Is it 3 or 4?
83.
83, okay.
All right, 1, subject to subsection 2. In this subpart, authorization means a license, permit, certification, or other form of authorization by whatever name called, other than registration under section 181(2). 2, this subpart shall not apply to any authorization under another part of this act for which a specific procedure is provided in this act. 3, a person who is not an officer may apply for an authorization by submitting an application to the commissioner in such form and manner and accompanied by such information as may be prescribed by rules. 4, on receiving an application under subsection 3, the commissioner may require the person who submitted the application, hereafter in this part referred to as the applicant, to provide such additional information as the commissioner considers necessary for the purposes of determining the application. B, shall, if satisfied that the authorization meets such criteria as are prescribed by rules for the grant of the authorization, grant the authorization subject to such terms and conditions, if any, as the commissioner considers appropriate. C, shall, if not satisfied that the applicant meets the criteria referred to in paragraph B, refuse to grant the authorization. 5, the commissioner shall notify the applicant in writing of the decision under subsection 4. And A, where the grant is subject to any terms and conditions, specify the terms and conditions. B, in the case of a refusal to grant the authorization, state the reasons for the refusal. Clause 184, suspension or revocation of authorization. The commissioner may revoke an authorization granted to an applicant under section 183 or suspend the authorization for such period as the commissioner considers appropriate. If A, the applicant, in writing to the commissioner, requests the revocation or suspension. B, the applicant fails to comply with any terms or conditions subject to which the authorization was granted, or fails to comply with any provision made by or under this act. C, the applicant provided false or misleading information in the application for authorization. D, the applicant has been convicted of an offense under this act. E, the commissioner is satisfied that the applicant no longer meets the criteria referred to in section 183(4)(b). Or F, the commissioner determines that the authorization is no longer required. 185, procedure for refusal of authorization or suspension or revocation of authorization. 1, subject to section 186, before the commissioner refuses to grant an authorization under section 183(4), or revokes or suspends an authorization granted on an application under that section, the commissioner shall give written notice of the proposed refusal, revocation, or suspension, as the case may be, to the applicant stating A, in the case of a suspension, the proposed period of the suspension. B, in the case of a revocation, the proposed effective date of the revocation. C, the grounds for the refusal, suspension, or revocation as the case may be. And D, the period within which the applicants may make written representations thereon to the Commissioner, being a period of not less than 7 days from the date of service of the notice on the applicant. 2, after considering such representations as are made by the applicant pursuant to a notice under subsection 1, the Commissioner may, as the case requires, A, proceed with the refusal, suspension, or revocation. B, grant the authorization or withdraw the proposed suspension or revocation. Or C, modify any proposed period or date referred to in subsection 1A or B, or any terms or conditions of the grant of authorization or any other aspect of its decision as communicated in the notice under subsection 1, and shall notify the applicant accordingly. 3, an applicant whose application has been refused or whose authorization has been revoked under this subpart may at any time thereafter make a fresh application under section 183 for authorization. Clause 186, immediate suspension of authorization. 1, notwithstanding section 185, the Commissioner may, in accordance with this section, suspend an authorization granted under section 183(4) to any person with immediate effect. 2, the Commissioner shall not act under subsection 1 unless the Commissioner is satisfied that immediate suspension is required in order to A, preserve the integrity of the customs system, B, prevent the occurrence of fraud on the revenue or other unlawful revenue loss, C, protect the interest of national security, or D, otherwise protect the public interest. 3, upon suspending a person's authorization pursuant to this section, the Commissioner shall notify the person in writing, stating A, the period of the suspension, and B, the grounds for the suspension as far as can be disclosed without compromising the customs system or any customs operations or compromising any investigation relating to the suspension. 4, a person who is notified under subsection 3 of the suspension of that person's authorization may, within 7 days after receipt of that notice, or such longer period as the Commissioner may in the circumstances allow, make written representations as to why the suspension should be withdrawn. 5, after considering such representation as are made under subsection 4, in a particular case, the Commissioner may A, withdraw the suspension, B, confirm the suspension and specify the period for which it shall continue, being the same or a shorter or longer period than that specified under subsection 3A, or C, revoke the authorization.
Chairman, on our technical team review, we wanted to make an adjustment at subclause 3, that's clause 186(3). And it has to do with the fact that this provision is treating with an immediate suspension of authorization. And we notice that there's a provision for the Commissioner to provide the notice. But we are concerned, we noted that there's no time period within which we are required to provide the notice. And it's our view that it may be prudent for us to insert one, just so as to ensure fairness all around to all parties. And so this suggestion will be language along the lines of requiring the Commissioner to provide the notice immediately or promptly, but no later than 7 days from the date on which the suspension takes effect. Because we recognize that an immediate suspension of an authorization can and will likely have a negative impact on the affected person. And so there really should not be any undue delay in the commissioner notifying the person, notwithstanding that there will be security and other reasons why the commissioner would have taken the action, but there should be no undue delay in the commissioner bringing that matter to the attention of the affected person.
Understood. Let's continue in part, was that 15? No, part 11.
Part 11, provisions regarding rulings, determinations, and decisions. Subpart A, advanced ruling. Clause 187. Are you hearing me clearly?
Hearing you clearly.
Very well. Application for advanced ruling. 1. A person who is an importer, exporter, or producer of goods may apply to the commissioner for an advance ruling in relation to A, the tariff classification of the goods, B, the origin of the goods, or C, any other relevant matter as specified by rules in respect of which the commissioner considers it appropriate to issue an advance ruling. 2, an application for an advance ruling shall relate only to transactions between the same parties in respect of goods of a single class or kind. 3, an application for the purposes of this subpart shall A, be made to the commissioner in such form and manner as may be prescribed by rules, and B, contain such information and be accompanied by such supporting documents or other information as may be prescribed by rules. 4, on receiving an application under this subpart, the commissioner may require the applicant to submit any additional information that the commissioner considers necessary in order to make a decision on the application. (188) Consideration of application for an advance ruling. 1, upon considering an application for an advance ruling, the commissioner may A, grant the application, or B, refuse the application if the commissioner is satisfied that 1, any of the provisions of section 187 is not met, 2, the applicant made a false or misleading statement in the application or has omitted to state a fact that is material to the consideration of the application. 3, the application is frivolous or vexatious or otherwise has no merit. 4, the application concerns an issue that is the same as or substantially similar to an issue A, that is before a court, B, that is subject to a review or appeal under this act. 2, the commissioner shall notify the applicant of the commissioner's decision whether to grant or refuse the application within 30 days after the receipt of the application, and A, if the application is refused, of the grounds for the refusal, or B, if the application is granted, the advance ruling shall be issued within 90 days after the date of receipt of the application. Clause 189, form, content, and duration of advance ruling. 1, subject to this section, the form and content of an advance ruling granted by the commissioner under this act shall be prescribed by rules. 2, an advance ruling shall A, specify the goods of the class or kind to which it applies, B, identify the applicant for the ruling as the person who is entitled to clear goods for a customs procedure specified in the ruling on the basis of the ruling, and C, state the validity period of the ruling being a period in accordance with subsection 3. 3, an advance ruling shall be valid for a period of 3 years as from the date of issue of the ruling unless A, otherwise prescribed by rules, or B, its validity ceases under 193, section 193. Clause 190, effect of advance ruling. 1, subject to subsection 3, an advance ruling binds both the person referred to in section 189(2)(b), hereinafter referred to as the recipient of the ruling, and the commissioner. 2, an advance ruling shall, to the extent applicable, be applied in any assessment or reassessment made in relation to the goods to which it applies, by or on behalf of the recipient of the ruling or the commissioner, as the case may be. 3, the commissioner may rescind an advance ruling in any case where the commissioner is satisfied that the ruling was based on the submission of information that is false or misleading in or omits any material particular, and B, is not bound by an advance ruling rescinded under paragraph A. Clause 191, clearance of goods under advance ruling. When clearing goods for a customs procedure under an advance ruling, the recipient of the ruling or other person clearing the goods on behalf of the recipient shall A, provide proof to the commissioner that the ruling applies to the goods, and B, comply with the applicable procedures prescribed by rules. 192, amendment of advance ruling. 1, the commissioner may amend an advance ruling either on application by the recipient of the ruling or on the commissioner's own initiative. A, to correct any error in the ruling. B, in the case of a ruling concerning an advanced tariff classification, to give effect to an amendment to the first schedule. Or C, in the case of a ruling with respect to the origin of goods, to give effect to an amendment to the rules of origin applicable under any relevant agreement to which Jamaica is a party. 2, the commissioner shall immediately notify the recipient of the advance ruling in the case where an amendment is made under subsection 1, and the amendment shall take effect. A, in the case of an amendment under subsection 1A from the date of the notification, unless subsection 3 applies. B, in the case of an amendment under subsection 1B from the date of the amendment to the first schedule. C, in the case of an amendment under subsection 1C from the date of the amendment to the rules of origin. 3, if the recipient of an advance ruling establishes that he relied on the advance ruling in good faith and that the correction is to his detriment, the date on which the amendment takes effect shall be postponed to such date as shall be specified by the commissioner in accordance with rules and having regard to the justice of the case. 193, effect of subsequent change in law. An advance ruling ceases to be valid immediately upon the occurrence of any of the following circumstances. A, if a provision of this act is repealed or amended, and that repeal or amendment renders the advance ruling incompatible with this act. Or B, if a court delivers a judgment that renders the advance ruling legally incorrect, whether expressly or by virtue of an interpretation placed by the court on a provision of this act. Subpart B, voluntary disclosure relief. Clause 194, interpretation of this subpart. In this subpart,
Go ahead.
If I may, so we would have just had discussion regarding advance ruling, but just to indicate that the agency in putting forward the advance ruling and awaiting the legislation, what we have in place now is the advance advice that we would have put into production by way of our Expedited system. we have deployed into production a system, a module within Asicuda to allow for us to provide advanced advice, though now won't be binding, Minister, because we, of course, are waiting on the legislation to take effect. And then, of course, we will have it as advanced ruling. We will be deploying this very shortly, and we're looking at July 12th to roll out to the public for them to be aware of this system and to utilize it. As was indicated, I think Ms. Edwards would have indicated that this is important to the trade facilitation agreement that we would have signed off with WTO, sorry, and of course the revised Kyoto Convention, which also give guidance on this means of trade facilitation. So we are doing our best, Chair, on the customs side to ensure that we keep abreast with the modern nature of what the legislation requires and to ensure that we have a system in place to support it. So that's by way of our PSA, Chair.
Yeah, understood. You're proud of it, of the change you're making, and which will be fully effective when this law is passed.
Yes, Chairman, and if I may just add to what the Commission had mentioned, what this is really doing is giving traders a lot of predictability, because sometimes persons will say, I am not certain how customs will deal with my goods if I'm importing it. Someone may have a business idea, they want to import a particular item, they may be concerned, how will customs treat with these goods when they arrive? This gives them the opportunity to write to customs and get a decision, or in the case of the advice, guidance from us before they have even imported the goods, so that they can know how things will be treated when the goods actually arrive.
Yes, very a step that introduces a level of efficiency and lack of, reduces insecurity. Thank you for mentioning that. Okay, let's continue.
Incorrect assessment means an assessment or reassessment in respect of goods due to the submission of inaccurate or incomplete information or the non-submission of information to the Commissioner, which resulted in A, no duty and tax, or an incorrect amount of duty and tax being paid or recovered on the goods, or B, an incorrect refund or drawback being made by the Commissioner. Voluntary disclosure relief means any relief which may be provided for in an agreement under Section 197.1. 195, application for voluntary disclosure relief. 1, a person who has paid or is liable to pay duty and tax or interest on duty and tax, or who has received or is entitled to receive a refund or drawback on duty and tax, may apply for voluntary disclosure relief if that person knows or suspects that such duty and tax, refund, or drawback is incorrect because of an incorrect assessment. 2, voluntary disclosure relief under subsection 1 shall not apply, A, to a person in respect of whom a customs audit or customs investigation in relation to the matter has commenced but has not yet been concluded, or who has been notified as to such an audit or investigation, or B, if the matter involves any act of fraud. 3, notwithstanding subsection 2, the Commissioner may allow a person to apply for voluntary disclosure relief if the Commissioner determines that, having regard to the circumstances and ambit of the customs audit or customs investigation, that the application would be in the interest of good customs administration and the best use of the Commissioner's resources. 4, an application for voluntary disclosure relief shall be submitted to the Commissioner in such form and manner as may be prescribed within a period of 5 years from the date of the incorrect assessment on which the application is based. Clause 196, requirements for voluntary disclosure relief. An application for voluntary disclosure relief shall be granted if A, the application is voluntary, full and complete in all respects. B, the commissioner is satisfied that the assessment or reassessment concerned involved an incorrect assessment. And C, the commissioner and the applicant conclude an agreement in accordance with section 197. 197, agreement for voluntary disclosure relief. 1, before the commissioner grants an application for voluntary disclosure relief, the commissioner and the applicant shall conclude an agreement in writing. A, setting out the details of the incorrect assessment on which the voluntary disclosure relief is based. B, stating the amount owing to the commissioner. C, containing an undertaking by the applicant to pay to the commissioner the amount owing in accordance with such arrangements as may be agreed. And D, containing an undertaking by the commissioner that, should the applicant comply with the undertaking given in terms of paragraph C, 1, the commissioner will not institute criminal proceedings against the applicant for any offense under this act or any other customs law arising from the incorrect assessment. And 2, no penalty will be imposed on the applicant for any contravention of this act or any other customs law arising from the incorrect assessment. 2, the commissioner may act in accordance with subsection 3 if A, an applicant for voluntary disclosure relief made a false or misleading statement in the application or failed to disclose information material to the consideration of the application, or B, there are reasonable grounds to believe that the applicant for the voluntary disclosure relief was aware before entering into the agreement that an audit or investigation of any kind had commenced or was about to commence in respect of the matter. 3, the commissioner may A, cancel any agreement concluded with the applicant under subsection 2 and withdraw any relief provided for in the agreement. B, recover any amount owing by the applicant as determined in accordance with this act and any other applicable customs laws. C, set off any amount paid to the commissioner under the agreement against the amount owed to the commissioner by the applicant. And D, impose any penalty applicable to the applicant under this act or any other customs law. 198, refusal of application. If the commissioner refuses an application for voluntary disclosure relief, the commissioner shall be entitled to recover any amount owing by the applicant under this act or any other customs law. Subpart C, administrative reviews and appeals. 199.
If I may, Chairman, if you permit
go ahead.
me, just to indicate that the part that we just went through for voluntary disclosure relief is part of the thrust by the JCA to provide mechanisms by which whenever errors are made and perhaps a person did not pay what was due and owing, those persons are nevertheless able to bring the matters to the attention of customs, make a correction, and move forward without incurring penalties or any prosecution under the Act. And it's really designed to encourage compliance and to recognize that we know that there are times that errors occur without any wrong intention, and this provides the modality for those matters to be resolved to the benefit of both the revenue as well as the individual. And of course, this is also something that is consistent with international best practice.
Understood.
199.1. A person who is aggrieved by an applicable decision of the commissioner made under this act may, in writing to the commissioner within 30 days after receiving notice of the decision, in accordance with subsection 2, apply for a review of the decision. 2. A notice of the decision for the purposes of subsection 1 shall be given by the commissioner within such time as shall be specified by rules and shall include the reasons for the decision. 3. An application under subsection 1 shall be submitted in the manner prescribed by rules, together with such information as may be prescribed by rules. 4. The commissioner may, if satisfied that there are good reasons for doing so, for example, as a result of any factors outside of that person's control, extend the time allowed under subsection 1 for the making of an application. 5. The commissioner may, A, personally consider and determine an application under this section or assign an officer or a review committee established under section 201 to consider and determine the application, or B, assign an officer or a review committee established under section 201 to make recommendations to the commissioner on any matter concerned in an application for the purpose of enabling the commissioner to determine the application. 6, the commissioner may, by written notice, summon any person to appear before the commissioner or such officer or committee as is assigned under subsection 5 to hear or make recommendations on the application, and that person may be examined on oath or otherwise upon such appearance. 7, for the purposes of this section, an applicable decision means a decision or omission in respect of A, an authorization, B, the assessment of any duty or tax, C, the abatement of any duty, D, the entitlement to a refund or drawback, E, an advance ruling, F, any voluntary disclosure relief, G, the release of goods, H, the imposition of a fee or charge or the recovery of a cost, I, the detention or seizure of goods, or J, the issuance of any administrative penalty notice. 8, the regulations may provide for reviews other than reviews in respect of applicable decisions and the procedure for such reviews. 9, an officer assigned for the purposes of subsection 5 shall not be the same officer who made the applicable decision, which is the subject of the review, but shall be an officer of equivalent or higher rank who did not participate in the applicable decision. 200. Time for review, for determining review. 1, an application for review under section 199 shall be determined within such time as shall be specified by rules. 2, an application for review under section 199 shall be determined by either by A, confirming or varying the decision concerned, B, setting aside the decision concerned and substituting a new decision, or C, referring the matter back to the officer who made the decision to be dealt with in accordance with the directions of the commissioner. 4, the commissioner shall, in writing, notify the applicant of the decision on the determination of the application and the reasons for the decision within such time as shall be prescribed by rules. 201, review committees. 1, the commissioner may make rules, A, establishing review committees for the purposes of this subpart, B, prescribing the categories of decisions that may or shall be dealt with by such review committees, and C, providing for the rules of procedure governing such review committees. 2. Rules made under subsection 1 may establish specialist review committees for reviews against specific categories of decisions. 3. A review committee established pursuant to rules made under subsection 1 may be composed of A, officers of the customs agency only, or B, officers of the customs agency and other suitably qualified persons. 202, effect of application for review. 1. The fact that an application is made under section 199 does not have the effect of suspending or deferring A, a person's obligation to make a payment or to do anything required to be done by virtue of the decision concerned, or B, the commissioner's entitlement to recover any amount owed to the commissioner by any person. 2. Where an application for review relates to a decision concerning goods that are under customs control, the commissioner shall not release those goods unless the amount assessed by the commissioner in respect of the goods is paid or the commissioner receives security in accordance with Part 12 for the amount to be paid. 203, appeal to tribunal. 1, a person who is dissatisfied with the decision made on an application under section 199 may appeal to the Revenue Appeals Tribunal in accordance with the applicable law within 30 days after being notified of the decision. 2, the tribunal may extend the time allowed for submitting an appeal under subsection 1 if satisfied that there is good reason to do so. 3, the tribunal may determine an appeal before it by A, confirming the decision, or B, varying or substituting the decision, which may include increasing or reducing any assessment of duty, tax, fee, charge, or penalty imposed under this act. 4, the tribunal shall provide to the parties on an appeal a written record of its decision on the appeal, including the reasons therefor. 5, an appeal from the decision of the tribunal shall lie to the Supreme Court in accordance with the applicable rules of court.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to ask that we stop there. It's a logical point to end at. We begin at part 12, clause 204, the next time we meet. At this point, let's the date and time for the next meeting would be, and bearing in mind, it's just that for these meetings, we have stopped at 5, and I think members and those who are working with the Joint Select Committee have relied on that kind of predictability. So at this point, I just want to, Kamisha, we had reserved these Thursdays in July?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so we have the proposed date and time for the next meeting is next Thursday at 2 o'clock. And at this point, I just want to ask if there's any other business that anyone would want to discuss.
No, Mr. Chairman, save that I need to speak to you immediately after this call, please, on a revenue matter.
Okay, give me a call. If there is no other business, may we have a motion for the adjournment? Senator Johnson Smith.
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
And seconded by, I'm looking for, is that is Senator Crawford still here or Senator Allen?
Yes, seconded.
Seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Meeting adjourned.
Aye.
See you next
Thank
week,
you.
Thursday. Thank you very much for today, and we'll see you next week, Thursday. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
brutality isn't a legality. There's no rationality as to why this abnormality should become a mentality. A mentality which kills and torture. Are you really telling me you're afraid to speak out because you might be called an informer? Let us break the barrier of brutality and enforce it with a